Alright guys, so let's talk about Cubeshape on the Square-1. So this is going to be taking a Square-1 that is not in a cube shape and turning it into a cube again, and we're going to go over all the steps for this. So first up, we have the beginner's method for Cubeshape, which involves getting all 8 edges on the same face like this. So let's go over how we would do it. So what we're going to see when we get a scrambled Square-1 like this is that we're able to slice down the middle like this, obviously, and this means we're able to move our edges from top to bottom like this. So our goal is going to be to do whatever we have to do to line up all 8 edges on the same face as such. So let's say, for example, I got a scramble like this where we have a shield, that's what a shield shape looks like, and another shield on the bottom. So I have a bunch of pairs here is what we call them, and I'm going to try and slice so we can see that this will be on the bottom of this slice on the right. I'm going to try and line it up so that when I slice down, we're going to form what's called a scallop at the bottom here, where we have 4 edges in a row. So now I see that we have more pairs, so I'm able to move the scallop off to the side, send another pair down there, so now that we have 6 in a row. I can move it to the side again, and then we can get this last pair here to move down where we have 8 edges in a row, which is our goal. So the reason that this is the beginner's method for getting the cube shape for Square-1 is once we get all 8 edges in a row, it's actually not too difficult to get it back into a cube. We'll go over those steps in a second. But first I wanted to look at this case here. So we have a scallop on top where we have 4 edges in a row, which is looking very good. And on the bottom we have a pair that we see. We also have this L, is what this is called, off to the side here. So I'm going to show you how to fix this case to make things a little easier. So what we're actually going to do is get the scallop up here. We're going to move the L up so that now the L becomes, if we were to cut it like such, we have a line. That's what these two would be across from each other is called. And we still have the scallop over here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move the line to the bottom, right? We can actually move this so that we can move the pair that's down here right next up to the rest of the scallop. When we move it up, we have just a line left on the bottom, and conveniently the line will actually line up. You see that? The line will line up with the ends of the scallop like this to make 8 in a row. So this is one of the hardest cases. The other situation is you might get 2 L's. In that case, you would just pair them right next to each other. We'll show that really quick. So like I was saying, when we have 2 L's, for example, we have a pair right here is what I see. And then we have this L here with the corner that's in the middle of these 2 edges. And then we also have an L shape down here. All we really have to do is put the L's right next to each other, and it's going to form a line and a pair. So for example, I'm going to make sure that this is in the upper left at the bottom face. I make sure this is in the upper right. And when I line them up here, we're going to have a pair and a line. So now what I can do is I can cut this kite, this is called a kite, in half. And I can move this line to separate it. And then now I can systematically just start pairing up my pairs like this. There's all my edges in a row there, and then we just have this pair left over that we can match up to have 8 in a row there. So that's kind of the hardest case that you'll run into with this beginner's method. The next step is going to be turning it back into a cube. So I'm going to show you with my main cube here with the black and the white to make it a little easier. So once we have all 8 edges in a row, we're going to just split this down the middle, and we're now going to have scallop, right, with the 4 edges in a row, and the rest are corners. We're going to line them up along the slice like this, and we're going to cut it again. And now we will have what's called 2 barrels. So this barrel shape here. And then we're going to split one of them right down the middle like this, and the other one we're going to split in half the other way, so turn 90 degrees like this. So when we cut that, then we're then left with a kite and a kite, and this is the easiest case for getting back to a square because all we have to do is line the kites up as such. We cut that, and we're back into a square. And we don't have to worry about the fact that this middle bar is flipped. It's actually pretty easy to flip. And even during the solve, we can just leave it like that, but this is considered our cube shape. So part of the beginner's method is also realizing that if you run into any of the cases that we went through in the middle of that, being scallop, barrel, kite, you can also get back to cube shape just doing the same steps. So those can actually be considered a shortcut if you ever run into a scallop at the beginning of a scramble and you just want to get to it from there. You don't have to put it back into all 8 edges. That's just going to be wasting time. So if your goal is to learn the least amount possible to be able to solve the Square-1, that's all you really need to know in terms of Cubeshape, but I'm going to go into some shortcuts here that are a little more advanced, but also not really that difficult. Just take some watching again and memorization, and these will actually help out a lot. So the first advanced Cubeshape step I would say is to actually make it into a scallop-kite. Scallop-kite is a well-known design here. If we have scallop on the top or bottom and kite on the other side, we'll notice that all we have to do to get back into Cubeshape is slice through the middle of both of them. And this is what we will be calling fists. This is what a fist looks like here. And we have what we call similar fists, where they appear the same as on the top and the bottom, right? They're lined up with each other. They're not opposite fists where one would be facing the mirror of this, which we'll see later. But then once we get to similar fists, all we have to do on the bottom is make sure that the fingers per se are pointed towards the slice, and then you make sure that the knuckle of the fist is on the line we're going to slice here. We're going to slice that and we'll get kite. And it's actually a lot easier sometimes to get to scallop-kite, and that's why this is a method that will speed up Cubeshape a lot. Alright, so now I'm going to go into some more specific shape combinations that we can get that we can easily solve if we notice them. So identifying this is going to be a shield where we have the corners and edge pairs like this. Shield square is going to be the name of this formation here. And all we're going to do to fix shield square is we're going to tip the point of the shield like this, so it's right next to the slice like this, and we'll notice that when we cut it, we end up with similar fists, and we just went over how to solve similar fists. All we have to do is move this over one there, slice again, and then we have kite. So that's a pretty easy solution. Okay, so fairly similar to our last shape. This time we have shield with a kite on the bottom. So it's pretty close to shield square, but the way we're gonna do this is a little bit different. So we're actually gonna turn it into shield square. So we're gonna put all of the edges for the shield on the left side here, and then we're going to move one of our L's from the kite upwards, like that. We're then going to be able to rotate this L downwards so that when we bring this other L back down, we have a square now. So now we know how to do shield square. We just put that there, like fists like that. And that will be the solution for kite shield. All right, so the next solution we're going to look at is opposite fists. So you can tell that we have two fists here. We can tell that they're opposite because we tried to line them up. For example, I try to line the knuckles up here, and the flat parts are both going to be on the bottom. So this fist is facing that way. This fist is also facing that way when we flip it. So these aren't going to be superimposable fists. So the way to solve this is going to be to get one of our L's in the upper left here from this fist, and then get our other L in the upper right on the bottom, so that when we bring them together, we're going to form a kite, and then we have a kite shield. And we actually know how to deal with kite shield already. We just went over it, right? So what we're going to do, slice that half down, make a square like that, and then we're doing this from the bottom. It's a little bit different, but not too much. And then we're gonna get fist, and we can get to square using the steps of the previous shapes that we just went over. All right, so the last cube shape we're gonna go over that kind of belongs in this group of them is going to be the kite with the square on the bottom. And this one's actually kind of long, but it uses all the steps that we just used. So we're going to point the kite directly to the left, the bottom like that. We're going to slice, and then we will have our dissimilar fists or opposite fists like we had before. So we remember that we do that by lining up our L's so that when we cut them, it'll be a kite. Then we have a shield. So then on one half of the shield without the edges, we're gonna bring one of the L's down. We reverse the side on this, keeping on the left, but moving it down to this quadrant. We bring it back up so it's a square, and then we have shield square. If we cut that the proper way, we'll have fist. Then we can get back to our cube shape. All right, so we're gonna look at a new shape called a muffin. and that's where we have the 3 edges at the top like this, with 1 at the bottom. And this situation is going to be for muffin square. So muffin square, what we want to do is just take the muffin, let's point the top of it here, and we're going to want to align it so that the line is on the right here, so that when we cut, we'll end up with similar fists, and we know how to do similar fists. Back to cube shape. Okay, so now we're going to look at muffin here, and the way we're going to deal with muffin is you're going to align it so that a slice would cut a line from one side, and then it would cut when the muffins are pointing at each other like this, and you want to cut from the other line on the left side here. So you would want a line on the right up top and a line on the left on the bottom here. So when you cut that, it'll turn into a barrel, and from the beginner's method we know how to do that. Turn into kite, from barrel, and then back into a cube. Alright, so next we have barrel kite here. It's actually a pretty easy one to think about. All you have to do is make it so our slice is going to be right down the middle of both of them. And when we do that, we'll get similar fists, which we're familiar with by now. So we can slice that to get to kite, and back to a cube there. Alright, so here we have 2 cases. This is called a paw, or some call it a pawn for some reason. To me it looks like a paw, but whatever. This is similar paw, where you have the same thing on the top and the bottom here, so it's superimposable on itself. And then we have opposite paw, which we'll talk about next. So for similar paw, what you want to do is you want to arrange it so that you have the L in the upper right here and in the lower right here. And when you turn it like that, you'll actually just get similar fists. So that's not too bad. That opposite isn't too bad either. What you want to do is you just want to get all of the edges on one half of the slice like that on one side, and then you want to get the edges on the bottom half on the right side here, so that when you move it up, you'll have 2 scallops next to each other here. And this actually gets a scallop pretty easily if we move it down and then line up our 4 edges, and then we can get back using the beginner shape method to cube shape. Alright, so I want to run through a quick scramble here. That's not one of the cases that we just went over out of all the advanced cases, so there's no name for this, but I just want to show you what my thought process would be if I saw this. So I see this L here. It's always kind of a good idea to match L's up right next to, so putting the L here, matching the L's up next to a set of 4 like a scallop like that, because you can always just make a line like that. And what we actually have here is this pair at the bottom, so if I offset it by 90 degrees from the slice, I can move the slice down to get a kite, and we have scallop-kite, which is honestly usually the easiest way to get back into cube shape, is getting into scallop-kite. It's just very versatile compared to the 8 edges method. So here's another one that's a little bit wonky. What I see here when I do this is I see that on this side of the slice there's kind of an L there, and then there's this kind of half shield over here. And we also have a pair on the bottom. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and keep the L with this other pair here and put my pair from the bottom right here. So I'm going to put it in the upper right like this, so that when I slice up it goes to the opposite side here and it's lined up. And now what I see here is I can have a line like that again, and then I have this pair, so we can form another scallop-kite by doing that, kind of similar to what we did in the last example. So like that. Alright, so the good news is the first step of our Square-1 is done. We've got it back into a cube, more or less. But that's going to be the first step of our solve, and we'll get into edge orientation and corner orientation in the next steps. Thank you for watching.